Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 23 of the World War II Daily Podcast, second episode of 2026. We are very happy to have here Dr. Pieper for another awesome conversation that you are going to benefit a lot. Again, don't forget to check out our Instagrams at World War II, World War II underscore daily, and at Samuel.the44 daily World War II information and content. And information about the show so you can stay tuned and don't miss a single thing of our work. All the links of this conversation will be in the description of this episode, so you can check it out right now or later, whatever. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It helps us a lot. It's free, and if you change your mind, you can just unsubscribe and move on. Okay, so let's dive into this new episode. We are super excited to have here Dr. Pieper to talk about a very important topic. And Dr. Pieper, thank you very much for being here, for dedicating your time to us, to our audience. We are thrilled to listen to you and to learn from you. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your work, the things you've done, and how did you get to write about the topics we're going to discuss today?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Henning Pieper. I'm currently a high school teacher here in Germany. I teach English and history, and I have done research on Nazi crimes in World War II, particularly on a unit of the so-called Waffen-SS, the SS Cavalry Brigade, under the command of Hermann Fegelein. This unit is what I wrote my PhD dissertation about, and I later was able to compile a book from this PhD dissertation entitled Fegelein's Horsemen and Genocidal Warfare. And prior to becoming a school teacher, I worked in Germany, for example, as a visitor guide at the Belsen Memorial. And I also worked as a school consultant for the German War Graves Commission. I did remembrance projects, history projects, and projects for the prevention of right-wing extremism with school children. And at the moment, I do not really have time to focus on historical research, but I still do some writing now and then. I'm working on a spin-off of my PhD dissertation. And yes, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you and to answer your questions.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I'm also an English teacher, by the way. That's my profession.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah. So, Dr. Pieper, what first drew you to the SS Cavalry Brigade, and when did you realize this relatively obscure unit deserved a full-length study?
I first came across this unit when I was looking for a topic for my PhD dissertation, and I had already worked at the Ludwigsburg branch of the German Federal Archives, and this particular archive is holding all the records of German post-war trials against Nazi perpetrators. And I asked the then head of the archive, Dr. Andreas Kunz, if he could tell me about a topic that would be possible to do research on for a PhD. And he recommended me case files of the SS Cavalry Brigade, or to be more precise, of court proceedings against former members of the brigade's two regiments. And there were two large case complexes, one against former officers of the 1st SS Cavalry Regiment, the case that was done before a court in Munich, and there was another case against former members of the 2nd Regiment, which was conducted before a court in Brunswick, northern Germany. And I looked into these files, And these two complexes were very large, and I very soon thought that this is a good idea, this is a suitable topic, and I then discussed it with my PhD supervisor, and he too said this was very feasible as it held a lot of material, and so this all came together.
This is interesting because we get a lot of deniers on internet saying, "Oh, you can't prove this and that," and actually, there's a lot of documents out there to prove everything they are actually denying. Samuel, you can carry on to the next question, please.
So, Dr. Piper, you described the SS Cavalry Brigade as having a dual role as both a combat unit and as an instrument of genocide. How did these two roles develop and interact in 1941 and 1942?
Well, in the preparation of the invasion of the Soviet Union, Heinrich Himmler, the head of the SS, was looking for SS military units he could use to police the area behind the front lines. And these units also were to initiate the Holocaust in the occupied areas, to conduct counterinsurgency, and to combat Red Army units if at all possible. And the SS Cavalry Brigade perfectly matched this description, as the unit was highly mobile, also possibly in areas with swamps or bad roads, bad road conditions, far away from the main highways and thoroughfares. So this unit was selected as it had also undergone some training for combat, and it was also fully equipped, modeled on cavalry units of the regular German army, the Wehrmacht. And Heinrich Himmler selected this particular unit and sought to integrate it into the structure of rear area units that would be suitable for combat against any kinds of people the Nazis deemed to be undesirable in the newly occupied areas. And in this case, first and foremost, they were to be employed to kill the Jews in the occupied areas. And the combat role developed later on. At first, in the first months of their deployment in the Soviet Union, they did see only very limited combat, and this changed later on towards the end of the year 1941 in the course of the Red Army counteroffensive west of Moscow, when they saw extensive combat they were absolutely unprepared for. Until the spring of 1942, the brigade sustained losses of about 50% of its personnel.
Okay. Um, Interesting. I I know very little about specifically the SS Cavalry Brigade. It's very interesting. So, in your research, what did you find about the process of brutalization among the SS cavalrymen? Were there specific orders or moments that stand out as turning points?
Well, even before entering the Soviet Union, the SS Cavalry Brigade had been used as an occupation unit in Poland for 2 years, and they had already committed many crimes, such as driving people from their homes, um, robbing people, brutal beatings, and also mass executions. So many of the SS troopers had already experience in committing acts of violence. And in the summer of 1941, they were, however, they were employed in mass killings on a much larger scale, and this really was overwhelming. This was not on a limited scale. This was not arresting a few people or taking part in executions of small groups of people, or however you might use the term small in this case is inappropriate anyway, because it's about human lives. Um, in the summer of 1941, the men underwent a very brutal and very quick conditioning to mass killing. They had to overcome their killing inhibitions. And there are a few particular dates which stand out in this context. For example, on the 5th of July 1941, just before the brigade entered the combat zone, or the area behind the front line in Belarus and Ukraine, Heinrich Himmler came to visit the unit and said, "Your task is going to be to rid the Pripyat marshes of all enemies of the German people. This area is inhabited, this area's population consists of about 80% Jews. You are to wipe them out. And if any one of you does not feel fit to take part in this job, he may step out now." And it's documented that no one stepped out. Perhaps the men did not dare to, or they did not take him seriously, or perhaps they did not really know what their new mission was going to be. But Heinrich Himmler stood in front of them and he said, "You have to kill all Jews living in this area." And very quickly after the arrival in the area, this is exactly what they did. And there are absolutely harrowing and terrible first-hand accounts of men who either witnessed this or had to do it themselves. And what they did was participating or initiating the Holocaust by bullets in their particular area of deployment. And that, at this point in time, meant in executions, it meant that there was one victim for one shooter. So the men had to come up very close and they had to shoot large numbers of people on a daily basis. And they were directly confronted with the suffering and the fear of their victims. They had to escort them to the killing sites. They sometimes had to force them to enter mass graves. And the SS troopers had to either overcome their own inhibitions, or some of them even did this very willingly. And some of the superiors even were able to build a career in the SS on their organization of mass killings. So this is all it is very hard to grasp this and to find words for this. And it is absolutely heroic to read the accounts of survivors and of eyewitnesses, perpetrators. I'm looking for one particular date at the moment. Yes. At the end of July, they started the mass killings in Belarus, and just a few days later, they received an order that was passed down the chain of command to them by Heinrich Himmler. And in this order, it said that they had to extend the killings to women and children as well. So at first, they were only to shoot male Jews. And after a few days, Heinrich Himmler steps up the already brutal orders, and he told them to include women and children. This is exactly what they did. So again, they did not just select some victims. They managed to wipe out a significant part of the population of a particular area in about 3 months. Another absolutely harrowing source are the so-called Yitzka Bücher, that are accounts of Jewish survivors or Jews who originated from the same area. These accounts are available online, and they trace the history of Jewish communities in these areas. And you find the names of towns, cities, and small villages and their Jewish communities. And the sources try to follow up almost every single Jewish person that lived in this place. And in many cases, the history of Jewish community or shtetl life in this area ended on one particular day in the summer of 1941. And that's when the SS troopers arrived. So from all these accounts, you can grasp a very rapid escalation and a very brutal enforcement of genocide according to Heinrich Himmler's orders. And it's also evident that the men did not just follow orders, but they, as Ian Kershaw put it, they were working towards the Führer in even carrying out the orders in a more brutal manner than they were required to. For example, including more victims. So this was a very rapid process of escalation. And there's also evidence that some of the men, if they did not break down, that they were suffering from what they had to do. So there was evidence of heavy drinking, and also that they completely questioned what they were about to do. I mean, they were not all hardened killers. They were not born as killers. They were conditioned to become killers, and for some of them, it was very hard to do this.
Yeah, it's. I think Samuel agrees with me. It all goes. It completes what Bjorn and Harrisville said. It complements what other guests who were into this topic, the war to the west, to the east. Sorry, and it complements. Like I remember Born saying that it was given a freedom to these soldiers, to these men, to commit crimes that in normal conditions and situations they were going to be judged, but it was given to them a freedom to forget about that and fulfill their mission, to complete their ideological I don't know, their ideological mission, right? I think I can say like it was a mission. Yeah, Samuel, do you want to make the next question? Do you want to carry on?
So we were talking about the Holocaust by bullets in the occupied Soviet Union. Can you take us through one of such operations that really shows what these actions were like or how they were carried out on the ground?
Yes, I can do that. The best documented operation the unit was involved in was the massacre that was carried out in the Belarusian town of Pinsk between the 7th and the 9th of August in 1941. Pinsk is a small town on the river Pripyat. It had about 26,000 inhabitants in August 1941, and of these 26,000, about 70% were Jews. And the SS Cavalry conducted a massacre there that lasted for about 3 days, and they closely liaised with other German agencies that were present in the city, but they had the largest contingent of manpower and of possible killers. So just before the 7th of August 1941, the SS Cavalry Brigade sent out 2 squadrons of SS troopers, one regular cavalry squadron and one machine gun squadron, to set up a staging area outside the city. They liaised with a very small Einsatzgruppen subunit in the city, and the Einsatzgruppen subunit had already established a so-called Judenrat or Jewish council that was to help the Germans in arresting or making contact with the Jewish community on the German or on the orders of the Germans. So there was this Jewish council, the Jewish organization that was used by the Germans to round up the Jews. There was the Einsatzgruppen subunit that was responsible for organizing things with the Jewish council in the town, and there was the manpower contingent of the SS Cavalry that was ultimately conducting the massacre. So at first, the Jewish council was forced to put up posters, placards in the town to recruit Jewish teenagers, male teenagers and men, for working details. And when they began to assemble in the city, the SS troopers began to round them up and to escort them to an area just 1 or 2 miles outside the city. There, some mass graves had been prepared, and throughout the day, further groups of Jews were rounded up and arrived at the killing site. And the killing continued throughout the entire day, 7th August 1941. And the victims had to lie down in the mass graves, and then the shooters would line up at next to the pits, next to the mass graves, and would shoot the victims in the neck. And this was an absolutely gruesome process as they only as a so on the first day of killing, when the Jews were rounded up, they were marched out of the city of Pinsk to the mass graves, about 1 or 2 miles outside of the city, and they were forced to lie down on the ground within the graves, and then the shooters stood next to them at the side of the graves and shot them in the neck. And the killing continued throughout the entire day. According to the SS records, um, more than 4,700 people were killed that day. And when darkness began to set in, some of the people who were waiting to be killed tried to escape the killing site. And that's when the SS set up machine guns, or the machine guns were already set up, and they started machine gunning the fleeing people. And this killing continued for 2 more days. And until today, the exact number of victims is not known. It is estimated that at least 7,000 people were killed within 3 days. It's possible that the number was actually rather 9 or even 10,000 people. And this 3-day massacre is important because it is very well documented, and it's part of a larger picture. There's evidence that Erich von dem Bach-Zelewski, one of Heinrich Himmler's most brutal lieutenants, arrived at the killing site. He landed next to the killing site with a small plane, personally watched the SS men kill their victims, and even commended them for their bravery and their conduct in the face of mass violence. And this man, von dem Bach-Zelewski, he's important because he was Heinrich Himmler's main SS general, who was responsible for policing the rear areas, for killing the Jews, and for initiating counterinsurgency if necessary. And he closely worked together with his opposite number in the Wehrmacht, the Wehrmacht General von Schenkendorf, who was responsible for the rear areas of Army Group Center. And yes, Erich von dem Bach-Zelewski personally viewed the SS troopers in action as they were killing at Pinsk. And there are many absolutely brutal accounts of what the men did that day. They even forced their victims to give up their valuables before they marched to the execution pits. And this comes from a German source. A Wehrmacht sergeant witnessed what they did. He witnessed how the victims were robbed, and he later saw the killings, or he saw the killing fields outside of Pinsk. And also, this Pinsk massacre is important because it is the only major crime that SS troopers were ever brought to justice for in the time after the war. Several officers were convicted for organizing these crimes rather than taking part in them. And they were officers from the 2 SS Cavalry squadrons that were involved in the killing. And they were, as I said, almost the only ones ever to be convicted. 4 former SS Cavalry soldiers were convicted for crimes in West Germany, 1 in East Germany, and the 4 convicted in West Germany were all involved in the Pinsk massacre, apart from 1. And the person who was not involved in this particular crime committed other acts of atrocity in the same summer. So this massacre, these 3 days at Pinsk, are a crucial moment in the beginning of the Holocaust in the summer of 1941.
And this is why we do this show, right? To have information like that, to become accessible and interesting for people to listen to it, because we are facing a huge wave of this never happened. Prove me, prove me, prove me. And yeah, that's why we do it. Okay, so the next question actually involves. Hold on a second. I'm so sorry. Let's continue. Um, the next question involves some words in German. I will try my best. I could give it to Samuel, but I'll try myself. Okay. So forgive me if I mispronounce something or if I
No worries.
butcher German language, but I'll try. So the question is the brigade. Oh, sorry. No, it's here. Yeah. How does the SS Cavalry Brigade compare to other perpetrator formations, such as the Einsatzgruppen or Order Police Battalions? And what does that tell us about the wider machinery of Nazi genocide?
The SS Cavalry Brigade was better equipped, and it was also trained for combat, or it was thought that this unit would take up a combat role later. That was not the case with the Einsatzgruppen and the Order Police battalions. They were more paramilitary formations. And for the most part, Einsatzgruppen or Order Police battalions did not have to fight at the front line. Sometimes they entered towns or cities when the fighting was still going on, but normally they did not have to confront the Red Army directly. With the SS Cavalry Brigade, it was different. The units were modeled on cavalry formations of the Wehrmacht. The commander, Hermann Fegelein, was in close contact with the leading personnel of the 1st Cavalry Division of the regular German army, the Wehrmacht. They had known each other from their time together in Poland. And so the SS Cavalry regiments, at first they were a pretty ragtag bunch of volunteers, SS reservists, horse riders from Germany, and they slowly were shaped to become regular cavalry soldiers. And they were supposed to take on a combat role later, and what they had to do in the Pripyat marshes, taking part in acts of mass violence, conducting genocide, that was, in the eyes of the Nazi leadership, in the eyes of Heinrich Himmler, it was to harden them for future combat, as the Germans expected decades of brutal occupation and possible fighting or subjugation of the local population in the Soviet Union, and the SS cavalry were to become a spearhead of these operations. So they were to conduct killings of civilians, as well as they were to be trained to become regular soldiers, and they were to enter combat as the situation deteriorated at the front line because of the Soviet counteroffensive in the winter of 1941-1942. But also, they always were thought to take on this combat role later, which was never intended for Einsatzgruppen or for Order Police battalions. But what these units all had in common was that they were to work together to achieve the goal of the Nazi leadership, as leading Nazis put it in their cynical terms, of ridding the occupied areas of all undesirables, such as people deemed racially inferior, unnecessary eaters, or military enemies, communists, Jews, as all these people did not have a place in the Nazi worldview, in the occupied areas, in what was to become living space for German people in the East, they were to be killed. And units like the SS Cavalry Brigade, the Einsatzgruppen, and the Order Police battalions, they were all agents to achieve this goal. They were means to an end.
So we were talking about the SS Cavalry Brigade, and I'm actually a bit curious because if we go to the end of the Second World War at Nuremberg, the SS was declared a criminal organization, but the SS riding units they were explicitly exempted from that judgment, even though their personnel or the people involved could have been complicit or have participated in serious war crimes. Um, could you tell us a bit more about that exemption and what this also means for post-war justice?
I can only speculate about this. The pre-war SS riding units were largely ceremonial and sporting formations. They served as guards of honor for the Nazi leadership. For example, they accompanied state visits of Benito Mussolini in Germany and other famous people, heads of state, and they did high-level riding competitions. In Germany, in Europe, and they were supposed to one day represent Germany at the Olympics. That was Hermann Fegelein's big dream. And if the war had started a bit later, perhaps they would have achieved this goal, but history had other plans for them. The interesting thing is that there are some leads and some examples of crimes that SS horsemen committed even before the beginning of the war. For example, in documents of the German Federal Archives, there was a hint that some of the very first SS riders, the very first SS regiment, then still a purely paramilitary or ceremonial formation, when this was formed at Munich, that they did guard duty at Dachau concentration camp. However, I tried to follow up this lead, and the researchers at Dachau told me that they had found no evidence that this was true. But there is evidence that Hermann Fegelein and some other SS riders were personally involved, interestingly, in a home invasion of a rich Jewish business owner in Munich the day before Reichspogromnacht or Kristallnacht, or, well, in late 1938, when the radical base of the Nazi party attacked Jews all over Germany. And some of the SS horsemen raided the house of a Jewish businessman near Munich, and they brutally beat him, forced him to give up his valuables, and imprisoned him at Dachau. And one of these men who raided the house was Hermann Fegelein himself. So there is this largely unknown crime, but no evidence that the pre-war SS horse riders committed crimes. But I think the main reason for them to be excluded from becoming declared a part of a criminal organization at Nuremberg was that this connection to the wartime SS regiments, brigades, and later cavalry divisions was largely unknown. We must not forget that in the post-war time, there was no historical literature, or hardly anything. There was Reitlinger's work, The Final Solution. Later on, there was Raoul Hilberg's work. But for a very long time, the crimes of the Waffen-SS were unknown. The crimes at concentration camps were known. Massacres were well known, but often it was not known which particular units participated in this. There was simply no sources available, and the fact that East German countries behind the Iron Curtain were unwilling to give up information to investigators in Western Europe also didn't help. So this was, in many cases, simply unknown. Also, the commander of the SS Cavalry Brigade, Hermann Fegelein, was killed just before the end of the war, so he could not be brought to trial at Nuremberg or at another post-war trial himself. He could not be brought to justice. And so clearly, at first, there was no investigation of these crimes. It took about 20 years until investigation finally began. And the two trials that I have looked at, the one at Munich and the one at Brunswick, are very different in nature. The one at Munich dragged on for 10 years without anyone being convicted, and the one at Brunswick was conducted in a rather short time, within 2 years, and led to 4 convictions. I was able to conduct interviews with 2 of the former investigators who helped to bring people to justice in this case, and they too didn't know why people belonging to pre-war riding units were exempt from this at Nuremberg. but they too said that under different conditions, the men they convicted would never have committed these crimes. So post-war justice in Germany, in many cases, was simply not interested in bringing these people to justice. Whether or not this actually happened came down to if the particular state attorney, if the particular judge, if the particular policeman were willing to carry out investigations or not. Because the perpetrators had many exculpatory strategies at hand to help them, and they had networks to turn to. And investigators often were not able to penetrate this. In the case of the Brunswick trial, they were. So, I think I've diverged a bit from the original question here, but as I said, I have no proper explanation as to why the SS Cavalry, the pre-war riding units, were exempt.
We're digressing, but I was actually a bit curious because when I was reading your book, I noticed actually one name in particular, Bernard of Lippe Biesterveld, for us in Netherlands known as Prince Bernard. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about him? Because also in Netherlands, he's quite a controversial figure for some of the things which he has done.
Yes. I do not have much information about him. However, there is evidence that when he was still living in Berlin and before he became the Dutch prince consort, that he was member of various paramilitary organizations. And there is evidence that he actually was a member of the Mounted SS. In various sources, there are different units mentioned. I think one source has it that he was part of a motorcycle unit. One source states that he was a member of the Mounted SS, a member of a horse riding unit. I'm sorry, I cannot really elaborate on this. However, I did find evidence without regard to Bernhard zu Lippe-Biesterfeld about an SS riding unit in Berlin in which many diplomats, lawyers, employees of the German Foreign Office, and others belonging to the capital's elite were members and pursued their favorite sport, horse riding. They had their own riding school in a very noble part of West Berlin. And as I said, many diplomats were part of this unit. It's possible that Bernhard zu Lippe-Biesterfeld also was a member of this particular unit, given its high prestige. And another famous member of this particular unit was Hans Kammler, who later became a general in the SS, and he was responsible for all building activity in the concentration camps, including the gas chambers at Auschwitz. And this, at first he was a member of the SS bureaucracy in Berlin, and this riding unit was just, his membership there, I think it was just a hobby. But it's interesting that quite a few prominent names of the later SS leadership could be tied to this particular unit in Berlin. And possibly Bernhard was a member of this unit too, but as I said, I do not have substantial evidence to support this.
It's a good thing Samuel mentioned your book because, well, the link, if you want to buy the book, if you want to read this part about Bernard, you can buy Dr. Pieper's book. It's sorry if I mispronounce, it's Fegelein's Horsemen and Genocidal Warfare, the SS Cavalry Brigade in the Soviet Union, by, of course, Dr. Henning Pieper. The link is here in the description. Buying his book, uh, you help him, you help his work, but you also help yourself learning from reliable sources and real research and not all the BS we see around internet and all these crazy posts on Instagram. So I invite you and I encourage you to check out the link and buy his book and learn from real researchers and doctors and teachers and real people. As we all walk towards the end of this episode, I again want to emphasize how much we appreciate your time, Dr. Piper. We know life is very busy, and dedicating your time to us means a lot. So, Samuel, do you want to give us your final words?
If you've made it to this part of the podcast, don't forget to comment your thoughts, subscribe, and like the episode.
Well, Dr. Piper, I'll give you some more time. Again, we appreciate like that you talked a lot about many things. We like when the guest goes on, and we're just listening and learning from you because this is it's a double journey, right? We are trying to teach people, but we also learn a lot from you. So it's we really appreciate it. Do you want to say something else? Take this time to talk about projects that are coming up or things you want to mention. If you have any presence in social media, you can also share it with our audience. Don't forget that the links will be right here. Your final words, Dr. Piper. Thank you very much.
Thank you again for having me. It was great speaking to you. It was great having this opportunity to speak about my work. Um, this would not have been possible without the support of people working at archives throughout Europe. This was like a game of detectives, a hunt for facts across Europe that took me to the Czech Republic, to Great Britain, across Germany, and to other places. And I would like to thank them all. And yeah, if you're interested, check out my book. I'm currently working on a spin-off of this book. I'm researching the life story of one particular perpetrator, and I'm trying to write that up at the moment.
This could be an episode. Have that in mind. Once you
Definitely.
have the spin-off ready, we're gonna invite you again, and we will. We're interested, absolutely interested in learning
Great.
from that. All
Anytime.
right. Thank you very much. Keep that in mind, people. So again, as Samuel said, if you came all the way to the end, don't forget to subscribe. We appreciate your presence here. We hope you learned as much as we learned. Check out our Instagrams again. We are also on X and Reddit, but I'm working that out, so I'll be publishing that a little later on Instagram. And we're also on Spotify. If you're watching this on YouTube and you want to listen to us in your car when you're driving to work and everything, you can find us on Spotify, Amazon, Deezer. We are all over. Okay. Again, Dr. Piper, thank you very much. Samuel, thank you very much. It's late in Europe, so let's wrap this up and let's go. Bye bye. See you all on the next one.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.